Okay, here we are, and tonight's topic is, what's hate got to do with it? With a tip of the hat to Tina Turner, right? Or apologies to, probably is there's better way to put it. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to just talk about how the course, it's really one of those basic topics in the course, but boy, it goes so deep, because if we really watch in our mind, the unconscious stuff is there under the surface. I was thinking, actually, I was walking back from the post office this afternoon, which I discovered was closed, and I was noticing how I hate to forget that things are closed, but I still enjoyed the walk. But then I was noticing where about a block from here, a power pole caught on fire, or a transformer, whatever, caught on fire a few months ago, and they had to replace it. And they redid the fence and everything. And I was thinking, well, I wonder when they're going to underground the utilities. And then I was thinking about, well, what's really underground is really, the hidden hates and the secret sins. And there's a number where they say, call before you dig. Have you ever seen those? And you call the number, and then the folks will come out with the cans of spray paint and mark, phone lines and power lines and water lines and gas lines and all that stuff. And I was thinking, well, that's kind of like the stuff that's in our unconscious that the course helps bring to the surface. And it's sort of like we get the little color coded, oh, this is envy, this is resentment, this is out and out rage or whatever. But all those things that are really right underneath the surface, but we just have to notice the contents of our mind by noticing how we feel, and then the Holy Spirit helps us do that all the time. So anyway, so I just think that the underground stuff is where we need to just look at all the stuff that's happening there and not judge it. So I made a few notes here about A Course in Miracles classroom is all about undoing the hatred we have for ourselves, projected out as hatred for everyone and everything, in order to reach the real unchanging love. With a thank you, Tim, for a great class the other day about the changelessness that we're all returning to. And that's the unchanging love is really what we really want to remember. And that's what's beyond the ego's prison of special love, which I oftentimes put in parentheses, infatuation. And then when that facade fades and our tolerance and patience for getting our alleged needs met wears thin, then that becomes special hate or insinuation. So we go from infatuation to insinuation, from special love to special hate, right? So the Holy Spirit asks us to merely look without condemning or hating our decision-making mind at ego's insane use and practice of condemning and hating the entire dream it made up, but doing everything possible to avoid admitting any responsibility or complicity in that imagined decision and its subsequent projection. So that was sort of my quick summary of the Course's view of how we just need to keep looking with Holy Spirit's help at all the things that or kind of, in fact, I brought up the wheel of misfortune. And I was thinking about all the things that are the icons, if you will, of special love and special hate. I'm just going to read some of those off around the chart. That this is what Jeff Siebert did, that we've used here in the School for Course in Miracles. Time, money, the course itself, food, technology. I had a little forgiveness opportunity today when I discovered my solid state drive needs to be replaced on my computer. Weather, death. Let's see, what do we get? This sports, viruses, holidays like Christmas, and then of course the biggest one is others. We got transportation, shelter, politics. You pick your favorite item of the moment for the special love, special hate. But I like to think of them as like little coins that are flipping around moment to moment. They're like little shiny objects in the ego's viewfinder that keep us endlessly distracted and diverted from looking at the real contents of our mind, which is the unconscious guilt. And of course, hate is just a very classic variation of that unconscious guilt, right? Which is all unfounded, but we don't see that until we go through the the 3 steps of forgiveness, and first seeing that I'm not upset for the reason I think. It's not about those special love hate things that seem to be outside me, and all those different categories and variations of those we just rattled off, and neither is it about the unconscious but unfounded guilt that I made up, that I'm blaming on myself, but usually that's even a little below the surface there, like the underground utility map there, that the Course is helping us see that, with a little bit of help, Holy Spirit knows where to dig, and we don't have to dig very far. We don't need a backhoe. Usually a hand trowel sufficient. We can find what's going on there. So interestingly enough, I did the numbers game on the words love and hate and a bunch of others that are kind of related to hate. There's 1,594 instances of love in the Course, but only 166 of hate. And then I was thinking, well, however, to get to the real love, the unchanging love, we have to look at what we made up, which is the constantly changing, in effect, but never in cause, hate. So without identifying with that hateful thought system, that's the only way we're going to get through it. And we need Holy Spirit's help for that. So this is a gradual process of gently, patiently observing all the subterfuge, deflection, blame throwing, name calling, and just good old fashioned avoidance, and learning not to condemn or hate our decision-making mind, as we realize there is another setting for that 2-position switch in our mind, either Holy Spirit or ego's version of HS, which is hateful and spiteful. So, and then I started looking at some of the instances. There's 53 instances in the Course of hatred, which isn't that many, even though there's combined with the 166 of hate, that's quite a few. Even more, and these are kind of loosely related terms. Pain, there's 325. Condemnation or condemn, there's 154 instances of that. Wrong, which is we hate to be wrong, right? Right? Wrong, right? 96 of those. So I put in the parentheses next to that is Holy Spirit is happily incorrect. Glad to be wrong. Or if we let ego abuse it, the wrong, the other sense of the word wrong is an offense or crime or injury. So, but in either case, we have one or two thought systems to choose. And if we use Holy Spirit's version of wrong, we get to be happily incorrect. And it's a correctable error with Holy Spirit's help. But if we use the ego's version of wrong, it's like, okay, there's an injury that happened. It's real. I'm making a big deal about it. And it's that big deal meter that gets pegged whenever we notice that there's something that we're just not willing to let go of. So the next one, again, I think grievance really, I looked up hatred in a thesaurus online, and grievance wasn't in there, but it seems like it's just so closely related that I found a few that were related to that, and they kind of interweave. There's 93 instances of the word grievance, 52 of sorrow, 40 of upset, 39 of cross. And I was thinking, well, there's a double entendre there. You can either be angry, or it could be the cruise of fiction. We're cruising for the fiction, right? there's the cross that we bear as ego wannabes all the time. And then there's another word that was in the synonyms that I found was case. And I was thinking, well, the kind that applies here is be like in a courtroom battle. There's 29 instances, and there's probably quite a few of those have to do with that making a federal case out of whatever, right? That's kind of how one of the ways that ego works with hatred to keep us forever divided. And then I guess just to back up a little bit, I think it goes without saying, but it's probably good to always remind ourselves it's always and only about the mind. And hatred only, and all the other ego thoughts and emotions only work in a dualistic thought system, because there has to be an object to hate. And in fact, the Course says hate is specific, right? So even if it's a specific thing like I specifically, want it to be warmer, or or for, the political system to change, or, it doesn't even have to be a specific person, but there's always some specific, some part of the dream that we want to change. A few more words, then we'll get into some examples. Injustice, 26 instances in the course, 23 of distress, 12 of objection, 12 of unhappy, 12 of injure or injury, 9 of irritation, 9 of violence, 8 of outrage. We're having fun yet? 8 of spite, 7 of grieve, 6 of trouble, and 6 of trial. I put them in kind of descending numerical order here. And this one, one of my favorite parts of, or instances of the word trial is from chapter 31. So if you want to read along with me, I'm just going to read 3 paragraphs. And this is in page 666 to 667, right toward the end of the text. And again, the trials that we seem to face are basically projections of that unconscious hate / guilt / grievance, that whole complex of ego stuff that says, I pulled off dividing perfect oneness into these parts, and now I'm upset with some other part, until we apply the 5th workbook lesson and say, I'm not upset for the reason I think. And then again, with Holy Spirit's help, jump to 34 and say, and I could see peace instead of this. So any comments or questions so far, Dave?
So you keep mentioning with Holy Spirit's help, and I'm just wondering, what is your method? How do you relate to that?
Mostly just notice how I feel. If I'm not at peace, then it's like, okay, I need to switch teachers again, which is pretty much a many times per day process if I'm really paying attention.
And to do that, you just ask for guidance, or yeah.
I mean, I'm sure everyone has a unique set of things that kind of get us back into that frame of mind, but
there. Well, maybe this isn't the place for a discussion on that, but some people just observe their thoughts, and I was just curious. That's all. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Sure.
Maya has something.
Maya?
Yeah. Bruce, I have a question. Could you repeat what you said? I didn't get it to write it down fast enough. You said the trials we seem to face are the projected out parts. And then in turning pages and stuff, you went on, I didn't catch it. Can you recall what you said?
If I listen to the recording, maybe.
I could do that too.
Oh, okay. No, I don't recall exactly what I said, but
okay, that's fine.
Yeah. I just figure, anything where I'm not at peace I'm projecting somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I just figure that's a given.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
When you were going through the list of words, one of the 2 words put together that I realized were impossible is to be happily right. I can't be right and be happy. Mm-hmm. Oh, damn. And and then the opposite. I can be happily wrong. It's the only way I can be happy.
Exactly.
Just realize how wrong I am.
Yeah.
I was like, sitting with that one was a trip. Oh, and the other one was the ego is really a hateful spirit. I mean, it's kind of intangible outside of time and space, but I mean, instead of, we move from the hateful spirit over to the Holy Spirit.
Exactly.
And we become, in essence, to whatever degree we identify with the ego, we become that hateful spirit.
Yeah.
And there's tons of horror movies about hateful spirits.
Yeah, that actually brings up a good point, Tim, because I think the ego wants us to stay fixated on the body, but if we realize that we're even when we're in ego mode, it's really the mind that's choosing to be hateful or not, and that's but that's where we actually have a choice. If it's the form that's doing it to us, and we're stuck in thinking that it's backwards, then the locus of control is outside me somewhere, and I can't do anything about it. But if it's back in my mind, back in spirit mind complex, then I can do something about it. Yeah.
And then going back to what Dave Van Dyke asked, how often do we access the hateful spirit? We don't even try to access the Holy Spirit. We're just accessing hateful spirit, the demon inside of us.
And that's kind of on automatic most of the time, unless we're paying attention. Really, and anybody else notice that too? I think that's why, the Course emphasizes that it's mind training. It's like, if I can notice throughout the day, and I think that's where these early workbook lessons, they start out with, oh yeah, do it a few times a day. And, oh, and by the way, if you happen to notice you're distressed in any way, or there's not, any compromise to your peace, it's like, you might want to practice the lesson then, which, if we're honest, it's like, yeah, pretty much throughout the whole day. Unless we make the new default with a lot of practice, choosing the Holy Spirit's, remedy to the unconscious hatred, the unconscious guilt. We're going to kind of be working in the what's in it for me at the expense of everyone else, and the separate interest paradigm, and the unconscious sin, guilt, and fear stuff, right? So, yeah. Anyway, I just thought this.
Bruce, Lynn had something.
Oh,
Lynn Altman had something.
Lynn Altman, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciated the reminder about it's the mind that we're dealing with, because what happens to me is I get so caught up in the circumstance that's causing me the discomfort that I get caught in it, and then I get mad at myself for getting caught in it. And that just kind of keeps me, that getting mad at myself keeps me right in there with the outside circumstance. And I had the experience, again, the political field is where I'm getting most of my mileage these days. Just, looking at the future and all of the stuff that I could imagine going on. And I realized that I was, I was, that idea that I'm making that up, I'm making it how I see it. And I just, for a second, I just said, I would like to see this differently. It was just, I didn't even use those words. It was just like, I think it might be better if I stopped deciding what it is. And nothing much happened. I went about my day, and I noticed just like a couple of hours later, I was feeling peaceful. A couple things kind of came my way through email and stuff, and I didn't have the reaction that I did. And it wasn't a formal plea with the Holy Spirit to do something, but there was just that moment of, maybe there is another way of seeing it. And I let go of how that might be. I didn't need anything to change. I didn't need me to change or anything else. And it was such a lovely experience. And so I've been kind of just playing with that. And today with the lesson, trying to keep forgetting to do it different times. And I thought, what if I just asked to be easy with myself when I forget? It's just, there's an ease about that.
Yeah.
And it shifted again, everything. It was like, I got myself out of the picture of judging what I'm doing right or wrong, or what anybody else is judging right or wrong. Anyway, I wanted to share that. It was really helpful.
That is really helpful. Yeah. And a moment ago when I was laughing, I was only because I totally identify with, and I think probably very few people probably this last year have, escaped getting caught up in not only political divisiveness, but just kind of just noticing how much we want to divide everything. I mean, it's not like just this last year or anything. It's or the last 4 years, or the last 40, or the last 4,000. You know, it's really, that's the whole nature of the two thought systems. Is one is completely, you know, above the battleground, and like you're saying, when you tap into that, it's like, oh yeah, I don't have to, you know, berate myself for the resistance. And then when you stop doing that, it's like, oh, then it's easy, huh? or a lot easier anyway. And there is an ease, and there's sort of a grace that happens. Yeah. Thank you. That's really helpful. So, and the point that you made is like, it's not about the external circumstances. It's always about the choice of the mind. So I'll just go ahead and read. This is paragraphs, let's see, 5 through 7 on page 66, 666 and 667 in the last chapter in the text. Trials are but lessons that you failed to learn, presented once again. So where you made a faulty choice before, you can now make a better one. And I'm going to pause just for a moment to, you know, kind of like to tie into what you're just saying, Lynn Altman, is that, you know, here it is right at the almost the very end of the text. He's saying, you know, we're going to need to keep doing this. So don't feel bad if you notice throughout the day that it just happens over and over and over. And there's something that in one of Jeff Siebert's Foundation for A Course in Miracles classes recently, I listened to that, really just kind of hit me solidly. And it was like, you know, we're not going to be free of ego until, you know, the top of the ladder in the course. And it's like, so to expect that we're just suddenly going to have nothing but peaceful thoughts is really unrealistic. But we can have more and more peace by doing what you were just saying, is noticing that we do have a choice of what we're thinking, and just watch the ego's ticker tape go by and not identifying with it. And if we can identify with it less and less and less, I think that seems like that's kind of the mechanism that is being prescribed here to see less and less identification with it.
Going back to that, well, what Lynn was saying, and also what you were saying before about, I can't believe I never heard that before about cruising for fiction. I mean, that is really good. Where have I been all my life?
well, I have my own personal version, which is Brucifixion, so that I get to personalize it too. So I try to not take myself too seriously, and then use that as a reminder. So.
And the problem is, I mean, we're cruising for trials all the time.
Oh,
but
yeah.
we don't know they're fiction. I mean, there's the rub. If I knew they were fiction, you know, even if I'm cruising for them, even if I'm making them up as I go, I don't realize I'm making them up. I don't realize they're fiction. Mm-hmm. I just want to make them serious trials,
right?
That where I have to figure something out, and somebody needs to pay for what they did, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I don't think of them as fiction. I mean, it's a waking up to that. That is keep staying stuck in believing the trials are real is the problem. They're not fiction.
Because we want to make big deals out of so many little feathers floating and dancing in the wind. Yep. I'll start that over again. Trials are but lessons that you failed to learn, presented once again. So where you made a faulty choice before, you can now make a better one, and thus escape all pain that what you chose before has brought to you. In every difficulty, all distress, in each perplexity, kind of more synonyms for the hate and the grievances and stuff. A little tip of that to George Carlin, right? Christ calls to you and gently says, "My brother, choose again." He would not leave one source of pain unhealed, nor any image left to veil the truth. He would remove all misery from you whom God created altar unto joy. He would not leave you comfortless, alone in dreams of hell, hateful hell, to that, to be precise, right? But would release your mind from everything that hides his face from you. His holiness is yours because he is the only power that is real in you. His strength is yours because he is the self that God created as his only son. And that's that's tag. We're all it when we identify with it. We're all that Holy Spirit's mind when we allow that mind to replace our ego. The images you make cannot prevail against what God himself would have you be. Be never fearful of temptation then, but see it as it is, another chance to choose again, and let Christ's strength prevail in every circumstance and every place you raised an image of yourself before. For what appears to hide the face of Christ is powerless before, oops, scroll there. My screen just, there we go. Lost my place. Where was I? Okay.
Paragraph 4, statement 3.
There it is. There it is. Yeah. Powerless before his majesty and disappears before his holy sight. The saviors of the world who see like him are merely those who choose his strength instead of their own weakness seen apart from him. Thank you, Abe. They will redeem the world, for they are joined in all the power of the will of God. And what they will is only what he wills. Learn then the happy habit of response to all temptation to perceive yourself as weak and miserable with these words. I am as God created me. His son can suffer nothing, and I am his son. Which is to say, I'm avoiding all temptation to perceive myself as hateful, right? Okay. Thus is Christ's strength invited to prevail, replacing all your weakness with the strength that comes from God and that can never fail. And thus are miracles as natural as fear and agony appeared to be before the choice for holiness was made. For in that choice are false distinctions gone, illusory alternatives laid by, and nothing left to interfere with truth. So it just seems like, that all the hateful thinking that egos, love to hate, and if we can just kind of notice that tendency and see how much we want to make big deals out of stuff, how much we want to fire up our flamethrower and spray the blame out onto the world and make it all about the others that are doing us wrong in subtle and not so subtle ways. It's like if we can just kind of catch that and just say, do I really want the mileage that I think I'm getting from that? It's like, well, maybe not. So a few more words there. I haven't finished my list of synonyms. Okay, enmity, there's 5 instances. Well, there were a bunch that didn't show up in the course. There's some off the wall kind of sort of silly words too, but some that we're definitely familiar with, like bother. How many times a day are we bothered by something? There's only 4 instances there. Hostile, sometimes we're outright hostile. Resentment or resentment, there's 4. Injury, there's only 3, but I picked one of the quotes there that I thought was pertinent here. This is, if you want to follow along, I'm just going to read 3 more paragraphs. This is from workbook lesson 198 on page 397. That's workbook lesson 198 on page 379. I was only slightly dyslexic there. 379 is the page number. So, and this is the first 3 paragraphs. And let's see, we got injury is impossible. Injury, which is what we think is, the cause of our hate, right? We think that something outside us has injured us, or it could be something inside of us, something in our own mind. We're upset with our own ego. And yet illusion makes illusion. If you can condemn, aka hate, you can be injured. For you have believed that you can injure, and the right that you have established for yourself can now be used against you. The right instead of the happy. Had a double entendre on the word right there. Till you lay it down as valueless, unwanted, and unreal. Then does illusion cease to have effects, and those it seemed to have will be undone. So if we fight for our rights to be upset and to have a rightful victimhood and can point to the victimizer, it's like, why would I really want to keep doing that? And he says, then you are free, for freedom is your gift, and you can now receive the gift you gave. If we give up the hate and the injury and the grievance. And then paragraph 2, condemn and you are made a prisoner. Forgive and you're freed. Such is the law that rules perception. It is not a law that knowledge understands, for freedom is a part of knowledge. To condemn is thus impossible in truth. What seems to be its influence and its effects have not occurred at all. Yet we must deal with them a while as if they had. So once again, the Course meets us where we think we're at in the dream and says, okay, as long as you think that there's stuff in the world and there's other people and other things that are doing stuff to you, then we need all those specifics. And we need to ask Holy Spirit to, help us drag them, whether it's gently or kicking and screaming, to the altar of our mind, and just say, okay, let's set it down here under the close encounters beam and forgiveness, and with Holy Spirit's help, let's watch them vaporize together. So illusion makes illusion, except one. Forgiveness is illusion that is answer to the rest. Forgiveness sweeps all other dreams away, and though it is itself a dream, it breeds no others. All illusions save this one must multiply 1,000-fold. But this is where illusions end. Forgiveness is the end of dreams because it is a dream of waking. It is not itself the truth, yet does it point to where truth must be and gives direction with the certainty of God himself. It is a dream in which the Son of God awakens to himself and to his Father, knowing they are one. So that's what happens when we are willing to take our hidden hatreds and secret sins, and with Holy Spirit's help, notice if I'm not at peace, I need to drag whatever the specific is onto the altar of my mind and, give it to Holy Spirit, give it to that awareness, and let that, that light literally dissolve and vaporize the problem. But we have to look at it, and that's where the looking comes in.
Going back to that first paragraph about rights, the right I've established for myself, certainly as an ego, it hit me. I believe I have a right to be right, and I defend that right to my death. I have a right to be right about politics. I have a right to be right about who the bad guys are. I have a right to be right about who I am. I have a right to be right about that.
That's right, damn it.
Yeah, defend my inalienable right to be right.
Really. Dave?
You said that we need to take our hatred or whatever it is that we're dealing with to the altar, and then you said, but first we have to look at it. And
well, with Holy Spirit, in other words, we can't look at it without Holy Spirit's help. Otherwise, we're just going to, yeah.
And I guess my thought was that if we take it to the altar, we're already looking at it, aren't we? I mean, we're aware of what it is, and we're aware that we don't want it.
Yeah.
And am I off base here, or?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So I found
Dave Dempsey.
Oh, Dave Dempsey?
Yeah, just to expand on that a bit. When you say look at it, is it really looking at specifics, or is it just trying to look at that it's coming from you and not from the outside?
Yeah. I found that I need the specifics to get, usually the specifics are the trigger, but very quickly Holy Spirit says, at least, and not in words, of course, but it's kind of like, okay, now we've established that there's a change of teachers needed. Now having used the specific to get back to that place in the mind where you've noticed the discomfort, whether it's a hate or a jealousy or an anger or a depression or whatever, we take the specific, and then that kind of, you know, the specific suddenly becomes sort of the background, right? Kind of the backdrop. But then the foreground is really, I chose the wrong teacher. At least that's kind of how I imagine it.
Thanks, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had this image of when I'm in ego mode, and I think I'm looking with my ego, I'm looking at hatefully. I'm looking at hate with hate. You know, it just compounds it ad infinitum.
Yeah.
Looking at hate with hate.
Because love is an ego's vocabulary, so it's got to look at everything from either suspiciousness to viciousness, you know, which is, you know, varying degrees of hate or you know, divisiveness or whatever you want to call it. But hate is always polarizing, and it's always about, you know, like you were saying earlier, Tim, you know, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. It's always about, you know, dividing and conquering in one fashion or another and keeping separate. Right? Yeah. Well, here's a few more synonyms, getting down to the lower numbers. Horror, there were 3. 3 for damage, 2 for affliction. I was surprised. I just went through this thesaurus and I found one that was roar. There's actually 2 that have the word, 2 places in the course that have the word roar. I could find a few. And tribulation. Here's a quick one. I won't. You don't need to go there because it's just a real short one. I just found this quote that really nice because it's kind of a helpful reminder. It says, "In this world, you need not have tribulation, aka hatred, aka any ego thought, right? Because I've overcome the world. That is why you should be of good cheer." So, in other words, if we remember that, you know, Holy Spirit really does have the answer, and if we really can, you know, turn over what's going on to that awareness that we took with us into the dream, then it'll lead us back out of the imaginary labyrinthine cave that we thought we wandered into, and we pull the ego's string that led us further into darkness the other direction, then we work our way back to the light in the opening of the cave with the Holy Spirit's help. Oh, here a couple more that the one instance of loathe, one of howl. I thought that was such a funny word. I looked up that reference, and it's a pretty hateful, you know, no mince words description here. Who sees a brother as a body sees him as fear symbol or hate symbol, alternately, right? And he will attack because what he beholds is his own fear or hatred external to himself, poised to attack and howling to unite with him again. Mistake not the intensity of rage projected fear must spawn, or projected hate. It shrieks in wrath and claws the air in frantic hope it can reach to its maker and devour him. Well, that's good old insane dualistic thinking, isn't it? But that's the only thing it knows how to do, is just thrash around insanely and howl at the moon. Okay, back to the synonyms. There was 2 for repelled, and I grabbed both of those because it was kind of interesting. So here's this is from the text section 3, excuse me, text chapter 3, section 7, paragraph 2. This is on page 49 and 50. You cannot resolve the authority problem by depreciating the power of your mind. To do so is to deceive yourself, and this will hurt you because you really understand the strength of the mind. You also realize that you cannot weaken it any more than you can weaken God. The, quote, devil, unquote, is a frightening concept because he seems to be extremely powerful and extremely active. He is perceived as a force in combat with God, battling him for possession of his creations. The devil deceives by lies and builds kingdoms in which everything is in direct opposition to God. Yet he attracts men rather than repels them, and they are willing to, quote, sell, unquote, him their souls in return for gifts of no real worth. This makes absolutely no sense. Here he's spelling out the ego's, you know, thinking in great detail and saying, this is freaking nuts. This is totally crazy. Why would we want to do that? And then of course he's at every turn he's reminding us, it's like, be gentle with yourself when you notice yourself doing that, a whole bunch of times throughout the day, and begin slowly but surely, patiently, to just gently laugh at yourself when not derisively, not hatefully, but just with a very calm, gentle, kind of like what you're talking about, Lynn Altman, is that letting yourself off the hook quality, right? Just noticing that, okay, I must have been hateful. I must have been afraid of the love that's behind the special love hate tokens that keep spinning around. I must have been, more interested in the resistance and being right, and have my right to being right, than and being hateful about everything that seems to conflict with that, and yet none of that makes us happy. So if we just kind of keep asking Holy Spirit for help, we get that help. And then the other one that has that repelled word, very familiar one from lesson 93, light and joy and peace abide in me. And this is the first paragraph on page 161, lesson 93. You think you're the home of evil, darkness, and sin. And you could throw in hate there if you want to. Unabashed hatred, right? You think if anyone could see the truth about you, he would be repelled, there's the word, recoiling from you as if from a poisonous snake. You think if what is true about you were revealed to you, you would be struck with horror so intense that you would rush to death by your own hand, living on after seeing this being impossible. So I don't think any of us really enjoys thinking of ourselves as being, consumed with hate, but that's everyone's ego. I mean, right? I mean, if we really kind of notice how much we kind of want to water that down and make it like, oh, well, yeah, it's just a mild hatred, a mild annoyance, but it's intense fury is what the mild annoyance is veiling. Dave?
I think it was in Gary Renard's first book, Disappearance of the Universe. I believe Arden and Persa defined, or Persa, however you say it, defined ego as self-hatred.
Yeah.
I thought that was really appropriate.
Yep. It really is, because it's how could we love a self that we made up, that we knew was in opposition in our dreams only to the perfect oneness that we never left, but now we're devastated, that we think that we've pulled it off. How could there be anything but hate in that thought system? But we don't have to look at that all at once. We just have to kind of notice moment to moment throughout the day, when am I not at peace? It's like, oh yeah, I could be more peaceful in this. I could choose peace instead of this. What a concept. Oh, that's right. I have this course thing that I could practice more often. Yeah.
Way back when I first came to Denver and we started doing some presentations at the Rocky Mountain Miracle Center, it just happened to be, I happened to be given one on Halloween.
Yeah.
And so I was able to go through and just all the metaphors for devil and the home of evil, darkness, and sin, and all the references to murder, and all of them about, our obsession with Halloween is that it's all out there. It's not me. That the sin, darkness, fear, and all that stuff isn't inside of me, but it's out there. The devil made me do it. The demons made me do it. People were killing each other out there in horrendous, horrible ways. But I mean, it was kind of fun, actually, just to look at all those references, but they were all pointing back at each of us, that all that evil, darkness, and sin was not out there. It was made up inside of each of us. So that part wasn't so much fun, but just using all the phrases about all the Halloween kind of phrases that are in here, multiple phrases about Halloween.
For sure. I mean, yeah, there's Jesus minces not very many words in his course when he comes to talk about the ego, because he wants us to see the contrast between the peace that's really behind the special love hate, insanity, and see the, you know, the stark contrast between that and you know, the craziness that we made up, and realize that it's made up. Yeah, and it's not out there, right? Yeah, it's those are two words that I use for unconscious, unconscious unfounded guilt. It would also be unconscious unfounded hate. So, you know, unconscious unfounded rage, you know, any of these words that I've been rattling on: unconscious unfounded annoyance, unconscious unfounded malevolence. So here's one for malevolence. It is the malevolence of the unholy relationship, so seeming powerful and so bitterly misunderstood and so invested in a false attraction, your preference to the holy instant, which offers you peace and understanding. So, you know, we're malevolent. Our unholy relationship is pretty mean-spirited, is pretty malevolent. It's, you know, it's kind of like the Halloween adjectives you were talking about, Tim. It's like, yeah, but we, like you were saying, we just have to remember that the ego wants the costume and wants the facade, because, you know, once the costume comes off and we see that, well, it's not about anything outside, it's in my mind, then it's like, oh, well, that means I got to deal with it. Yeah. And then there's this classic a line from workbook lesson 21, which is just a one-liner, so you don't have to go there, with the word annoy in it, which is, you know, kind of anything that's upsetting is a kind of a form of hatred. You will become increasingly aware that a slight twinge of annoyance is nothing but a veil drawn over intense fury. Yeah, it's because there's no degrees, there's no order of difficulty, there's no order of there's no degrees or order of magnitude in insanity. It's one little bit of insanity is completely insane. You know, multiplying any number by 0 makes it nothing. And so anytime we take the hatred, which is a 0, and multiply it by that moment, that we're saying our real being doesn't exist in that moment, and that's a pretty hateful thing. Yeah. And then I was thinking about, and thank you, Tim, for pointing out this some months ago, that you know, the fourth law of chaos and the fifth law of chaos being the special hate, special love. So I thought it'd be appropriate to pull that in for the fourth law of chaos, you know, referring to special hate. So this is pages 491 and 492 in the text, chapter 23, section 2, and paragraphs 9 through 11. So again, page 491 through 492 in the text. The ego values only what it takes. This leads to the fourth law of chaos, which, if the others are accepted, must be true. The seeming law is the belief that you have what you have taken. And of course, we hate ourselves for thinking that we're ripping someone or something else off, right? So, but then the hate gets projected back out, and it's this endless cycle of attack, defense, hate, attack, defense, hate, attack, defense, guilt, attack, defense, guilt. You know, pick whatever ego thought. You know, it all cycles around and perpetuates until we do the wait, time out, stop, Holy Spirit, help me, Mr. Wizard. Let's take a moment out of this vicious circle and stop and look at this craziness. Okay, so this seeming law is the belief that you have what you have taken. By this, another's loss becomes your gain, and thus it fails to recognize that you can never take away save from yourself. And of course, that's not possible either, but that's the next step, right? The first we have to do the lesson 5, then the lesson 34, typically. I mean, but we have to do both of them with Holy Spirit's help. Yet all the other laws must lead to this. For enemies do not give willingly to one another, nor would they seek to share the things they value. And to egos, everyone's an enemy. Everyone's a hateful opponent, you know, in the dream of separation, whether or not we recognize it consciously or not. But that's, I think, what the Course leads us to is slowly but surely seeing how miserable we've made ourselves by hating ourselves and then projecting that hatred out to everything in our dream. And and letting the Holy Spirit show us that gently, patiently, without any, condemnation, and just say, wow, this is an incredibly whacked out dream that you bought into. And what if you were to just kind of look at this and see that it had no effect on your real being, and that the peace that's behind that is what you've always wanted, and it's just been waiting there patiently. And then it continues, and what your enemies would keep from you must be worth having, because they keep it hidden from your sight. So then we get to keep the blame game going by saying, well, they're depriving me. Whoever the they is, whether it's a special love or special hate partner or a group of people or a situation or whatever, it's it's the circumstance, and we set ourselves up for disappointments by making our happiness contingent on what happens and doesn't happen in the world. So, and all of the mechanisms of madness are seen emerging here. The quote enemy unquote made strong by keeping hidden the valuable inheritance that should be yours, your justified position and attack for what has been withheld, and the inevitable loss the enemy must suffer to save yourself. Thus do the guilty ones protest their quote innocence unquote. What, me innocent? No, I'm a hateful SOB. Shouts the ego over and over again, right? But not consciously. But that's basically, what's going on in the ticker tape if we're paying attention, right? It's like, wait a minute, why would I want to condemn myself of being hateful when there's another reality, another identity that I could choose? Okay. Were they not forced into this foul attack by the unscrupulous behavior of the enemy, they would respond with only kindness. If only. I'm thinking of your Al-Anon salute again, Tim. if only. But alas, yeah. But in a savage world, the kind cannot survive, so they must take or else be taken from. Yeah, it's a cruel dog-eat-dog world, right? But that's the ego's, hungry dogs of fear, right? But there's another way of responding to things. Okay. And now there's a vague unanswered question, not yet, quote, explained, unquote. What is this precious, I'm thinking of Gollum, thing, this priceless pearl, this hidden secret treasure to be rested in righteous wrath? Isn't there a Peter Sellers movie where he uses a phrase very similar to that, I think, as Inspector Clouseau. Anyway, never mind. Rested in righteous wrath from this most treacherous and cunning enemy. It must be what you want but never found. And now you, quote, understand, unquote, the reason why you found it not. For it was taken from you by this enemy and hidden where you would not think to look. He hid it in his body, making it the cover for his guilt and the hiding place for what belongs to you. Now must his body be destroyed and sacrificed, that you may have that which belongs to you. His treachery demands his death, that you may live. And you attack only in self-defense. So, our hatred and our vengeance is justified when we're in ego mode, because we think that the world is doing it to us, and we've got umpteen reasons every few moments to justify it. So,
but what is it he hid in his body?
Well, it's really the guilt, right? But we think that the guilt and the hate is out there, and so we get to keep our innocence, something like that, right? But then it occurs to us, it's like, if I'm projecting this hatred and this guilt and this fear, oh yeah, if it's going through my mind, that means it must be in me. Oh shoot! So there goes that ego theory down the drain. But that's actually good news, because then after taking that first step with Holy Spirit pointing that out, we can take the second step and see that didn't happen either, by using the specifics, right? So we just need to ask Holy Spirit to do the call before you dig, the 800 number, and look at our underground futilities, and and I just made a little comment here. The Holy Spirit will help us identify and vaporize the hidden hates and secret sins, like the folks that spray paint the lines on the ground above where those ego currents are running, sometimes just below the surface. So, yeah, so I thought it would be nice to actually do today's workbook lesson because it really is sort of the antidote to all the hidden hates. So any volunteers to read some of today's lesson, which is lesson number 46? Abby's got her hand up. You want to read a paragraph or two, Abby? And David Dempsey? Who else? Rebecca? Okay. Maybe each, how about 3 paragraphs each? That sound good?
46. God is the love in which I forgive. God does not forgive because he has never condemned. And there must be condemnation before forgiveness is necessary. Forgiveness is the great need of this world, but that is because it is a world of illusions. Those who forgive are thus releasing themselves from illusions, while those who withhold forgiveness are binding themselves to them. As you condemn only yourself, so do you forgive only yourself. Yet although God does not forgive, his love is nevertheless the basis of forgiveness. Fear condemns and love forgives. Forgiveness thus undoes what fear has produced, returning the mind to the awareness of God. For this reason, forgiveness can truly be called salvation. It is the means by which illusions disappear. Today's exercises require at least 3 full 5-minute practice periods and as many shorter ones as possible. Begin the longer practice periods by repeating today's idea to yourself as usual. Close your eyes as you do so and spend a minute or 2 in searching your mind for those whom you have not forgiven. It does not matter how much you have not forgiven them. You have forgiven them entirely or not at all.
Before we go on, I was just thinking what we could do is notice as we're reading this, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning, is you could use the word hate instead of condemn or fear. So as you hate only yourself, so do you forgive only yourself. So, and fear hates and loves forgives. That sort of thing. So I was kind of doing that as I was reading through this afternoon again. Yeah. Okay, David.
If you are doing the exercise as well, you should have no difficulty in finding a number of people you have not forgiven. It is a safe rule that anyone you do not like is a suitable subject. Mention each one by name and say, God is the love in which I forgive you. The purpose of the first phase of today's practice periods is to put you in a position to forgive yourself. After you have applied the idea to all those who have come to mind, tell yourself, God is love in which I forgive myself. Then devote the remainder of the practice period to adding related ideas such as, God is the love with which I love myself. God is the love in which I am blessed. The form of the application may be may vary considerably, but the central idea should not be lost sight of. You might say, for example, I cannot be guilty because I am a son of God. I have already been forgiven. No fear is possible in the mind of beloved of God. There is no need to attack because love has forgiven me. The practice period should end, however, with a repetition of today's idea as originally stated.
So before we read the last one, and I was forgetting there's only 7, but I was thinking like for example that paragraph you just read with the italicized portion could be, I cannot be hateful because I'm a son of God. I have already been forgiven. No hate is possible in a mind beloved of God. There is no need to hate because love has forgiven me. You know, so I think it seems like it's handy to kind of equate a lot of the, you know, those related insane thoughts and just and then all the related sane ones and kind of use them interchangeably. So yeah. Anyone have any comments on so far?
Well, then going back to paragraph 3, the last 2 sentences, it does not matter how much you hate them.
Mm-hmm.
You either hate them entirely or not at all.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Yep.
Hmm.
So so sobering, but it's a good sobering, right? Because when we kind of notice, you know, throughout the day how often we're just, you know, just even if it's just mildly you know, annoyed at something or a little bit bothered by something, you know, it's like, oh, there's the spray paint on the ground that the utility company, uh, you know, aka Holy Spirit, you know, spray painted for me, so I can just, you know, take a little trowel and not much effort at all, and just oh yeah, there's the secret sins and the hidden hates, you know, of thinking that I am this despicable me, this little you know, little monster that I think is the home of evil, darkness, and sin, and then hatred, and just say, oh, I could forgive instead of this. You know, I could see that the real identity that's behind that Holy Spirit is gently leading me by the hand to see, is truly loving.
Chris Jansen had some.
Chris?
Thanks. Yeah, it is helpful to me, and thank you, because I sometimes think, you know, we talk about there's just 2 emotions, love and fear, but oftentimes I don't think of fear as, it helps me, it helps that you've broken down fear into hate or other words like that, because it's more specific. And I was just saying, yep, that does help. It helps break it down what fear is, and fear is the big category, but where did it come from?
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you.
Yeah. Thanks. And I think it's helpful to just realize that, you know, any thought that's part of the belief in separation is related to any other thought that's in that thought system, right? And you know, they're all the same, and that's why, you know, the course really is about generalizing, and, you know, seeing what works and what doesn't, and generalizing, and just taking all the little sacred cows of, well, I'm willing to apply it in this area of my life, but not yet in this area. And then eventually, you know, with patience and with practice and uh, just persistence, gently, slowly but surely, you know, taking all those sacred cows out of the corral one at a time, and transforming them, you know, into places where we can apply instead of refusing to apply the course's metaphysics. Yeah. So, Rebecca, do you want to read the last one 3 times? Since I forgot there was 9.
How about just once?
Once is good too. Yeah, once is good. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The shorter practice periods may consist either of a repetition of the idea for today in the original, or in a related form as you prefer. Be sure, however, to make more specific applications if they are needed. They will be needed at any time during the day when you become aware of any kind of negative reaction to anyone, present or not. In that event, tell him silently, God is the love in which I forgive you.
Any thoughts about that one?
I just love how it says, oh, they'll be needed at any time during the day when you become aware of any kind of negative reaction to anyone, present or not. Like, that's like, oh yeah, you're going to need this every single second of every day, because when we're honest with ourselves, that's our job. You know, that's what we do.
Exactly. Yeah. And that has really struck me profoundly this last, you know, month and a half or whatever, now that we've been going through these early workbook lessons. I don't know why that didn't jump off the page as much as it's doing this year, but it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Anytime you feel the least little bit of upset, that's an opportunity to apply the course.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that line at the end of paragraph 4, where we name names, it goes back to do I generalize all this, or like what you were saying, Bruce, is we kind of start with the specifics. We name names, and that brings us back to the kind of generic hate that's going on underneath everything.
Yeah.
God is the love in which I forgive you. Name the name. See the person. Name them.
Yeah. And it seems like, one way that we might generalize is starting with, maybe I'm looking at part of my second monitor here. I've got the wheel of misfortune here, and I was thinking, well, maybe we take, a specific political instance or a specific politician, and then we pretty soon we say, oh, well, I could generalize this to anything that represents, government or authority figures or whatever, and see how, if I look at my projections, I could then see peace in all those situations, not just in a few isolated ones where I've managed to apply it, or people that I think are affiliated with the other side of the fence or whatever. So there's just one. Transportation, maybe I almost, well, I'll use a very specific example from about 2 weeks ago. I was driving back from California, Oregon, and there was a truck driver who decided that he liked the lane I was in much better than the one he was in. And I was very grateful that I was able to avoid doing a merge operation with this aforementioned semi truck, and just barely. And I immediately thought of. I actually felt really fortunate that I immediately thought, okay, what do I need to forgive? But the instant, for a few seconds there was this deleted expletive kind of thing. Of course there's that, but it didn't last very long. I'm happy to report it wasn't. If it would have bid a few years ago, it probably would have been much longer. And then when finally the adrenaline subsided, and I think it was actually an hour or two later, I finally got out for a rest stop. I looked, and the other car that had actually on the other side of me, that had actually just taken the rearview mirror and nudged it slightly. so it was like, yeah, I got off pretty easy. The angels were working pretty solidly that day for me. So I guess my generalization was, okay, I need to forgive more in a more general sense. But then I also applied it on a very specific level. It's like, I think I need to remember not get in the blind spot of trucks and be more conscious of that. But so I applied it somewhat specifically on a level of form. But anyway, I think looking back at that, though, I realized that I actually did have a peaceful frame of mind within a few minutes, and it probably would have been a few years ago. I probably would have been far more shook up a lot longer. And I think the adrenaline actually subsided a lot more quickly than it might have a few years ago. So, but we can take it to anything that is happening or not happening, and because we can just get just as upset about what's not happening, and make big deals and find things to hate about what's not happening, right? And learn to take all the specifics and gradually move them back to the place in the mind where we can generalize and say, oh yeah, I can apply this to everything. Wow, what a concept. So anyway, well, that's pretty much what I had pulled out. I literally, with all those hundreds of references to hate, I could probably go through a bunch of them, but if you want to, well, why don't I just pick one of them? Let's see here. Let's find one of them. Oh, here we go. Here's one of the synonyms. Bother. This is chapter 8, section 8, and paragraph 6. Sickness is a way of demonstrating that you can be hurt. It is a witness to your frailty, your vulnerability, and your extreme need to depend on external guidance. The ego uses this as its best argument for your need for its guidance. It dictates endless prescriptions for avoiding catastrophic outcomes. The Holy Spirit, perfectly aware of the same situation, does not bother to analyze it all. See, I was doing plenty of analysis, but I think I let go of the need to analyze it more quickly, using a specific example. It says, if the data are meaningless, there is no point in analyzing them. The function of truth is to collect information that is true. So that helps us to generalize, right? Any way you handle error results in nothing. The more complicated the results become, the harder it may be to recognize their nothingness. But it is not necessary to examine all possible outcomes to which premises give rise in order to judge them truly. Seems like that's kind of tying into the generalization idea.
I would say being squeezed by a semi is a pretty catastrophic outcome.
Well, yeah, I was thanking my guardian angels. Believe me, there's plenty of that going on. Yeah.
Do you know the planes, trains, and automobials?
Oh yeah. That was a great film.
Steve Martin and John Candy.
Oh yeah.
Get squeezed.
Yeah.
With two semis.
I'm gonna have to watch that again. Yeah, that was a fun one. Yeah. Really. Well, on that note, I don't have a closing meditation, but maybe we I'll just read the last little italicized sentence there. God is the love in which I forgive you, and we're forgiving ourselves for believing that hate is possible, right? So, yeah. Anyway, thank you all, and have a great evening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
And everybody else.
Thanks, Bruce.
Take care, everyone.
Okay.